Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Bionicle Inspiration series. We take a closer look at LEGO creations from across the Bionicle community. We examine them, we study them, we do everything we can to give you some inspiration. I say we, it's just me. I don't know why I'm implying multiple people. But this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series is all about low part count. So we're going to be looking at some MOCs that have been built with very few pieces, because let's face it, building, it's a really fun thing to do, but if you're low on parts, it can be difficult to do. But you can still make stuff even if you only have so many pieces. If you've got that lower part count, there's still stuff you can do. So we're going to be looking at a few different things here that can hopefully give you some ideas if you want to build with a lower parts count. So let's get stuck into it. The Figzer has built Conslugation. There's a lot of fun and clever part usages here. You know, building with the challenge of using very few pieces can actually sometimes force you to get really clever and creative with what you have. And so, you know, you might use parts in ways that you probably normally wouldn't because you're kind of thinking outside the box and, you know, deliberately limiting yourself. Sometimes that can be a really helpful thing to do. So these snails have shells that are made out of the two halves of the orb that's seen on Von Nebula's staff. They work pretty well as shells. Then one snail has a minifigure surfboard making up the body, and then the other snail uses a slicer head for its body. Now, of course, that slicer head, I believe, comes on this set here, which is called Judge, I do believe. Love those slicer sets. I want to do a video about slicers soon, whether that's a BIS episode or like reviewing some of the sets and stuff. They were cool sets. It's the, you know, construction sets that came out before Bionicle. They're cool. But I think that both of those for snail bodies was a really good choice. I like the variation too. It's good to see that the snails have different body types and stuff. And just in general, those pieces look like snail bodies. It's a good choice there. They also appear to be crawling over some type of like leaf of some kind. Now, this weird piece is actually a Duplo seaweed piece. And here it is on Bricklink if you want to see it. Yeah, Duplo's got a lot of weird, crazy looking pieces, and this part is kind of the perfect example of some of those weird pieces you can get out of that theme. Now, this piece appears in a set much like this one here if you are curious, but yeah, nice to see it in action here. So yeah, a lot of different weird, crazy pieces, but they work very well at capturing the look of snails. Very nicely done. Max Howell now has built the Soy Rush. So we went from clever part usages, now we're going to be moving into, I guess, using less pieces, but still ensuring that they're used effectively and efficiently. So as a result of doing that, I think, you know, this little character build here, they've got a lot of personality packed into this build. And it's all just because they're being clever with their parts. So I love the combination of using that Krana mask and that cowboy hat. You know, I think that Krana, just because it is a naturally very small piece when you compare it to a larger mask. I mean, hey, there's this sort of pile of dirt on the side here that has two different Bionicle masks there. Those are the Nuva masks, which are actually quite large masks, but, you know, most of your typical masks far bigger than a Krana mask here. So because of that, when you pair it with a minifigure hat piece like this, it just looks a bit more in scale. So yeah, lovely little head design that's been achieved there with those smaller pieces. But as cool as that is, I think the best part here has to be these cool 2x2 triangular sand blue parts that make up the pants on this guy. They're very fitting for pants, actually. By the way, if you want to know where these pieces come from, they come from one of these older Knights Kingdom sets. You can see them on the wheels of this catapult here. Now, I think this is just a great example of using only one or two parts, but in a really smart way. And you know, you look at it and you instantly see, like, oh, of course, that's pants. It just makes sense. This could have easily been like 20 different pieces that would have communicated that this is where their legs are. But if you can say it with just one or two different pieces, do that instead, because it's probably going to look better. It's going to look a lot more clean and simple and just easy to read. And most importantly, since that's what this episode is about, you're going to do it with a lower part count, so it's going to be cheaper and easier to manage. So yeah, I think that's rad. And of course, you know, putting those shoes on the edges there, that obviously helps sell that these are pants as well. So you've got to give a bit of love to those, you know, the shoes there. That certainly looks cool too. So, you know, study your pieces, just stare at them for a while, and suddenly it might start to look a little bit like something interesting, and you can build a mock based around that. Or if you're already building something, stare at your pieces and think, could this work for this specific part that I'm trying to build? But just be smart with it. Can you do it with less? And if you can, maybe that's the right option. I also love his little belly here, using this rotation joint piece in sand blue. Now, these often came on some other Knights Kingdom sets, this time the construction figures, and they were used on the joint joints for the articulation on these figures. But here it works so well as a little belly, and it's just, especially with the way that this guy's posed here, such a fun build, packed full of personality. That's a fantastic part use there. Just adore this entire build. Really, really fun. Mathagis Doubledan has built a Mask of Creation pedestal. I adore this. So, before we were talking about nice part usages, playing it smart with the parts you're using, but let's step away from character builds and all that stuff entirely, and let's look at something a little bit different now. A smaller scale build of a little stand that can hold some of your rarer masks. It can be nice to build a little character build and stuff, but if you can build a little ornament or a little thing that can go on your desk, that can be just as rewarding and just as cool, right? And hey, you might have a really rare mask in your collection, or just a mask that you think is really cool, or maybe a custom mask that someone's built that you're yet to put on a build, but you just want a nice place to display it. Why not do something like this? In this case here, we can see that they've used some of these big power miner wheel pieces to make this lovely curved circular base. Such a nice design there. These, of course, came on some of the power miner sets, like I was saying. Such a cool theme. And then on top of these wheel pieces, we can see this interesting circular part. They're used on the Medieval Market Village set here, specifically on this water wheel. We can see it on the side there. So that specific piece has some clips on all of the edges, and when we put it on this nice stand here, we can see that it allows for these blue flames to be neatly placed around the edges there. And gosh, that looks so cool, especially when you have the mask on there and everything. It creates such a just nice dynamic look. It's really cool. So yeah. Just a few parts, and boom, you got a really cool, solid, swell-looking display stand that makes Akimu's mask look so much cooler. And it's already a really cool mask, but now you can display it and make it look real pretty. So maybe you could do something like that in your own collection. Fred Boydell has built Squick. So I think the construction of this cute little dude here, just using those prefab limbs and bones, it's similar to what you might see on a Hero Factory or Bionicle G2 set, or even a Star Wars Ultra Build set, whatever. It's got that basic CCBS prefab frame to it. But hey, it gets the job done and it looks really nice. And also it's pretty posable too. Sometimes we can get caught up in needing to design a really unique torso design and limbs that use like 30 odd pieces so that it looks all complex and unique and it really stands out and blah. But there's nothing wrong with just using some prefab parts like this build does here and doing a quick and easy little mock that still looks really cool. And maybe you've got a set or two lying around. Why not take apart the pieces in those sets, combine them together, and build a new dude just purely using those prefab pieces? And you can still have a really fun, good time. And then you can do something similar to a few of these images here where they've given them a comically large weapon, posed them in some silly ways. And you just have a bit of fun. You can play around with them, pose them on your desk. If you're studying, you're working, or whatever, they can be a little desk buddy while you work. It's just a bit of fun, right? So I encourage you, don't be afraid to build a more simplistic build with those prefab parts. It still looks awesome. There's a lot of fun possibilities if you build in a similar way to that. And if it looks as cool as this mock does, you'll probably have a lot of fun doing it and you'll get a nice end result. So that's cool. My old friend Gringat has built Coretha. I really like this. So this is a build that's made using just pieces from the Protector of Water, as well as pieces from the Protector of Ice, and the third set that it uses pieces from is the Skull Warrior. So yeah, sure, okay, there's a much bigger part count on a build like this, especially with some of the other builds that we've seen so far. But if you already have those 3 sets in your collection, then it's a fair bit more manageable. It's not like you need to go online and spend money to buy parts to build with. You already have those parts in your collection. You just got to specifically build with those, right? And this is a great example. If you have those specific sets, you could do something very similar to this, but you could have 2, 3, or many other sets lying around in your collection. Why not do the exact same challenge? Just using purely pieces from those sets, can you build some sort of interesting combiner model just using those pieces? It's a really fun challenge. I've done it before. It's awesome, and if you get a good end result, much like Gringat has done here, you'll get something cool. And sure, there's more pieces to it, but like I said, it's manageable and a bit more cost effective, provided you've already bought the sets before. The build itself is great too, by the way. I adore that leg design, having that kind of chicken leg look to it, how it thins out towards the bottom. It's just a bit of fun. And then those skull spider masks as shoulder pads, such a nice look. So yeah, love the concept, and I love the execution for this build. Really, really cool. And now Loaf Builds has built Votarak. This might be the perfect example of a really well executed and really well built mock that doesn't really use too many pieces. I love this reimagining of the red Vizirac set here. There's such a distinct difference in the look, but still kind of capturing the rough essence of the original character too, which I always love that kind of stuff. And I suppose this is a much more spider-like look for a Vizirac, and it really does work in its favor here. So cool. The head design here is magnificent. It appears that that nice little button nose that it's got is a dark red minifigure racing helmet, and I joke when I say button nose. It's a nice way of attaching it to that hand socket piece and just kind of rounding off the edge there so it's not as abrupt or has that, cross section axle in there. You kind of cover some of that up and smooth everything out so it's a bit more consistent texture-wise with the rest of the build. Really nice decision to do that there. And then, of course, on that head design too, we have these minifigure berries used to make the eye design. So cool, and a great way of having two eyes on both sides there. Really, really, really nice. Then we've got a few of these lovely Exoforce robot arm pieces being used as the pincers on the front. Always good when you use those pieces. I don't think I've seen a MOC that hasn't used those parts well. Such a versatile, helpful piece, and it's working wonders here. The leg design's also really cool too. This bridging piece that connects that angled connector piece and that large dark red claw at the back here. That is the lightsaber piece from the old Star Wars Ultra Build sets. I've always loved that piece, and I've always loved that unique kind of like ringed texture on the side of this piece. Seeing it on the leg here, I think it just makes it look way more interesting. You could have just used some sort of plain old piece, but that interesting ring, I don't know, it does a lot, especially on a smaller MOC like this where it's a bit more hard to pack in those details. Just by choosing a piece of that interesting texture, suddenly it transforms that leg design and makes it look 1,000 times cooler. So adore that there, and just, I don't know, this is just such a fun build. I mean, even like the flames coming out of the butt there, so it looks like some sort of engine with flames spewing out. What a great choice, and just a great overall design. I really, really like this. So that's it for some MOCs that have a lower part count, or at least use pieces in ways that are a bit more cheap and easy to manage. So hopefully that's given you a bit of inspiration. And hey, if you do build a MOC after watching this episode that has a lower part count and is, just an excuse to build something, even if you don't want to invest heaps of money into pieces and stuff like that, let me know. I'd love to hear what sort of stuff you built. Be sure to check the links in the description so you can see links to all the MOCs that I showed you in this episode today, and check out some of the other fantastic builds that these builders have built. You'll have a great time checking out some of their other work, I'm sure, and maybe leave a comment on some of their stuff too if you enjoy it. In the description below, there's also links to my own social media, so you can check out stuff that I've got going on over there, and there's also the submission email. It's on your screen right now too, so if you want to submit some of your own MOCs to the show, you can submit them through that email, and I will do my best to feature them in a future episode. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now. Ow, that was my elbow. Oh.